Officer James Martinez pulled his patrol car to the side of the deserted country road, the frigid air seeping through every crack in his uniform. The night was unnaturally silent, save for the soft whisper of wind against his patrol light. Snowflakes drifted steadily from the charcoal sky, each one settling atop the other until the familiar landscape of rolling fields transformed into a blanket of white. At 20 years on the force, Martinez had seen winter storms that grounded commuter traffic and snarled highways, but tonight felt different, more foreboding. As though something urgent awaited him beyond the frosted windshield. He stepped out of the vehicle, the cold immediately biting through his gloves. His breath rose in silver plumes, and with each exhale, his pulse quickened, not from the cold, but from a nagging instinct he couldn't explain. The patrol: unverified report of stray dogs wandering near the old mill seemed routine, but unspoken worry twisted in his gut. He scanned the tree line lining the road, dark shapes blurred by the falling snow, searching for motion beyond the hush of the storm. Memories of his childhood rushed in. A lifetime ago, he'd grown up on a rural farm not far from here, where stray dogs were as common as the chickens scratching in the barnyard. His younger self had chased after litters of abandoned puppies, coaxing them with bits of stale bread and warmth from his jacket pocket. Back then, every puppy seemed salvageably dog worth saving. Tonight, that boy's optimism felt distant but not forgotten. As Martinez trudged toward the edge of the road, snow crunched under his boots, and the wind carried a faint, plaintive whine. He paused, lowering his flashlight and listening. The sound was subtle, a soft, rhythmic whimper that cut through the storm's roar. He followed the noise, each step careful across the uneven ground, until the beam of his flashlight struck a blurry shape huddled beneath a skeletal oak tree. Two more shapes pressed close to the first, their forms shivering in the gale. Martinez froze. The dogs were German shepherds, a mother, her black Hantan coat, dulled with frost, and her two pups, barely the size of a small goat. They were pressed together for warmth, their ribs visible beneath their matted fur. Their eyes, glowing amber in the beam's glare, reflected fear and desperation. The mother lifted her head slowly, nostrils flaring, her gaze fixed on Martinez as though assessing whether he, too, posed a threat the way the elements had. Memories of his own rescue dog, Sasha, surged forward, how she had leaned into his hand the first time he offered her shelter, how the bond between human and animal had healed wounds he hadn't known he carried. Now, he saw that same vulnerability etched in the German shepherd mother's half-frozen frame. His training kicked in. He crouched low, palm extended, voice gentle. "Easy, girl. I'm here to help." The wind gusted through the clearing, carrying the scent of pine and ice. Martinez retrieved a thermal blanket and a bottle of water from his patrol car, each movement deliberate and slow. He wrapped the blanket around the trembling family, whispering reassurances as he worked. The mother's tense posture eased, her muzzle softening as the warmth spread across her spine. The pups, too weak to resist, nestled closer, their whimpers quieting into small sighs. Moments later, Martinez sat on the snow-dusted ground beside them, his back against the patrol car. He poured water into a shallow depression in the snow, coaxing the puppies to lap at the thawed droplets. One pup, black paws trembling, lifted its head and drank. Martinez felt a surge of relief, but the stakes remained high. The storm was intensifying, temperatures hovering well below freezing, and hypothermia could set in within minutes. Above him, the sky darkened further, swirling clouds blotting out even the sparse moonlight. He pressed his shoulder radio to his mouth. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I have 3 German shepherds, 1 adult, 2 pups in critical condition. Requesting animal control and veterinary EMs for hypothermia and frostbite treatment." Over. His words crackled through the radio, carrying hope that help would arrive swiftly in that stark white expanse. Officer Martinez felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like the falling snow. He glanced down at the mother's trusting gaze and placed a firm hand on her flank. Despite his years on the force, he'd never lost the thrill of making a difference, of offering kindness when it mattered most. Here, in the heart of a raging winter, he vowed silently to do everything in his power to save this family. A lone patrol under a relentless blizzard reveals 3 stranded souls in dire need. As frostbite tightens its grip, a single act of compassion offers the first glimmer of salvation. The snow receded briefly from Officer Martinez's windshield as he drove the patrol route with renewed urgency. The abandoned mill district he was approaching bore the scars of economic decline: boarded-up windows, rusting machinery, and long-forgotten alleyways where stray animals often sought refuge. Locals whispered of a German shepherd that had taken shelter near the old boiler room, her soft whines echoing through the cavernous structure. It was likely she'd given birth just days before, the brutal cold driving her to seek any semblance of cover for her fragile new family. Martinez pictured a mother dog desperate enough to surrender her own safety in exchange for the faint promise of warmth beneath a crumbling roof. He recalled the call that had interrupted dinner with his wife. A passerby spotted a dog with pups, stumbling through drifts deeper than their tiny legs could manage. The dispatcher's voice had been clipped with concerned, temperatures predicted to fall into the single digits, wind chills even lower. Martinez's mind flashed back to Rita, the stray tabby he'd rescued 2 winters ago. He'd spent hours beside her in a cardboard box lined with his jacket, watching her eyes unfocus from exhaustion before they brightened again with tentative trust. Such small miracles were possible, but only if help arrived before hypothermia, claimed another victim. As he parked at the edge of the mill's lot, Martinez grabbed his flashlight and approached on foot. The snow was now ankle-deep, each step an effort against the slick crystals. He scanned the shadowed perimeter, listening for any movement beyond the hiss of the wind. Then he heard it, a faint scuffle, followed by a high-pitched squeal that froze his blood. Shining his beam toward the mill's side entrance, he discovered paw prints lost in drifts and tiny indentations where the pups had collapsed, exhausted. The mother lay nearby, body curled protectively around her offspring, her gaze fixed on the beam as though it were sunrise after a long, dark night. Martinez's heart ached at the sight. The mother's coat, once glossy and resilient, was mangy and coated with crusted ice. Her eyes were rimmed red, reflection of pain and unspoken questions. Why had her human abandoned her? How would she keep her pups alive in this merciless cold? He imagined the litter's earliest days, a soft whelping in a warm den. The puppy breaths like gentle puffs of steam, the mother's tender nuzzles as they clung to her warmth. Those memories, likely lost to neglect or cruelty, fueled his determination to intervene. From under his jacket, he produced a thermal blanket and 2 insulated bowls warmed in his cruiser. He knelt on one knee, careful not to startle the mother, and placed the blanket within reach while unfolding it slowly. Then he poured lukewarm water into one bowl and a bit of dog-safe formula into the other, coaxing the pups with gentle murmurs. Each tiny head lifted, trembling lips parting for the first drink in hours. The mother shifted closer, instinct overriding fear, and nudged a pup toward the nourishment. Martinez felt the tension in her posture relax by millimeters, a silent signal that his presence might not mean harm. As the pups lapped at the bowl, Martinez reflected on the larger picture, the city's growing problem with neglected animals. During extreme weather, the need for community outreach and winter rescue protocols. The countless lives slipping through the cracks when temperatures plummet. He vowed to share tonight's events with his precinct's outreach coordinator. 2. Press for emergency supply kits for stray rescue volunteers. But first, these 4 lives needed immediate care. The wind howled through broken panes overhead, carrying the promise of another storm front. Martinez pressed a gloved hand to the mother's shoulder, feeling the rapid thrum of her pulse beneath the frost-stiffened fur. He spoke softly, "You're safe now, I've got you." In that moment, the derelict mill ceased to be a place of abandonment, becoming instead the unlikely cradle where hope could take root if he acted swiftly. A desperate mother and her fragile pups find themselves on the brink of disaster in a derelict mill, with winter's fury closing in. One officer's compassion becomes their only lifeline. Night deepened around the derelict mill as the wind's howl grew into a merciless roar, rattling the rusted metal beams and driving icy shards through every crevice. Officer Martinez watched with growing alarm as the German shepherd mother's labored breathing condensed into tiny clouds of steam, each exhale more ragged than the last. Her 2 pups, pinned close beneath her flanks, lay nearly motionless, eyes, half-lidded bodies so stiff that even the slightest stir triggered tremors along their fragile legs. Freeze had claimed their ears and tails in a crystalline vice. Small patches of fur had darkened to slate gray where frostbite set in. Each bout of shivering convulsed them like marionettes jerked by unseen strings, wills weakening against the hunger churning their bellies. Martinez's jacket offered only marginal refuge from the blaze of cold. His gloves, soaked by melting ice from the blanket, left his fingertips numb, but he refused to retreat. He knelt beside the family, cradling one pup in his palm as he whispered, "Hold on, buddy. I won't let go." The pup's eyelids fluttered, and for a heartbeat, its whining chest pressed against his skin in a desperate plea for warmth. The mother pressed her nose into his side, breath shallow but trusting a fragile bond formed in bitterness and hope. Memories surfaced of his own dog's near-death from parvovirus, and how tenacity and relentless care had pulled her back from the brink. He needed that same miracle tonight. Behind the officer, the mill's shadowed corridors seemed to close in, echoing with the distant clang of loose metal and the scrape of shifting snowdrifts against boarded doors. He reached into his patrol bag for chemical heat packs, slitting one open and pressing it gently against the mother's flank before securing it with a spare gauze wrap. The chemical warmth blossomed beneath her fur, but frostbite's damage ran deeper than surface chills. He prayed her tissue would rally even as he stroked her head, murmuring encouragements. Then he turned to the pups, redoubling efforts. 2 more heat packs, improvised foothold shelters fashioned from his uniform, cap, and coaxing small sips of electrolyte solution from a syringe. Time became elastic in the storm's grip. Minutes stretched into eons as Martinez monitored vital signs, the mother's pulse thudding, slow but steady, the pup's faint heartbeats flickering like distant stars. He radioed for updates. Backup was en route, but the nearest veterinary unit lay 12 miles away, slowed by drifting snow. Each delay weighed heavily. Hypothermia can turn lethal in mere moments at these temperatures. He whispered apologies to the shivering family, promising that the next vehicle he saw would carry them to safety. In a rare lull between gusts, a pup stirred and attempted a feeble crawl toward its mother, scattering a few grains of snow from its fur. The mother responded with a soft whine, shifting to shield it, even as her own strength waned. Her eyes, once alert and vigilant, now glazed with feverish exhaustion, reflected both fear and an unbreakable maternal will. Martinez bowed his head, emotions tightening his throat. This was more than an animal rescue. It was a crucible testing the limits of compassion in the face of elemental fury. As he tightened the gauze around another heat pack, the officer realized that every second counted. The storm's crescendo threatened to erase their tracks, to bury them beneath fresh drifts, and render all hope futile. Yet in that shadowed mill, under the weight of howling winds and lethal cold, a fragile alliance endured, an officer's steadfast resolve intertwined with a mother's fierce protection. In the heart of adversity, the struggle for survival had never felt more urgent. Frostbite claws deeper, hunger gnaws relentlessly, and hope hangs by a thread, yet one officer's unwavering devotion may tip the balance between life and death. Officer Martinez sat back on his heels, staring at the mother's bowed head as she trembled with the weight of responsibility and exhaustion. In his mind, he replayed the moment he first saw her through the snow eyes, wide with fear and defiance. Now, those same eyes were dulled by the torment of cold and hunger, yet glimmers of fierce protectiveness still shone through. He imagined her memories, the warmth of her own puppyhood, the scent of her litter pressed against her side, and the instinctual drive that had carried her through every hardship since birth. In that instant, he felt the raw intersection of desperation and hope that defined her world. As he removed another heat pack from his bag, his own thoughts turned inward. He recalled the night his daughter had fallen ill, the helplessness that clawed at him when he held her in a hospital bed, suddenly powerless. He recognized that same paralyzing fear in the mother dog's posture, stiff, rigid, yet ready to spring into action should a threat emerge. Despite his badge and training, Martinez realized that compassion was his greatest tool. He whispered to himself, "You're not alone," not only to the dog but as a mantra against his own silent guilt for the times he'd felt unable to save. The mother dog lifted her head, ears flat against her skull, nostrils quivering as she scented the warmth radiating from Martinez's coat. Each breath she drew seemed a battle against despair. In that shivering form, Martinez saw the reflection of every creature struggling for survival against forces beyond control. He closed his eyes, conjuring a memory of Sasha, his childhood companion, leaning into his palm as he offered the first morsel of food after her rescue. The simplicity of that trust, the pure gratitude in her gaze, fueled his resolve to earn the same from this wary mother. Inside the officer's mind, conflicting emotions wrestled for dominance: sorrow for the family's suffering, frustration at the system that allowed abandoned animals to perish, and an unshakable determination to be their advocate. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, but tempered by empathy. He spoke gently to the mother, his voice low and steady, "I understand your pain. I'll keep you safe." The words echoed in the hollow corridors of the mill, a promise bridging 2 worlds separated by species but united by vulnerability. In the mother's internal world, fragmentation and clarity coexisted. She weighed instinct against caution. Should she trust another human after the abandonment that forced her from shelter? Hunger hammered at her resolve, and the cold had rendered her thoughts slow and disjointed. Yet an ember of trust glowed when Martinez's hand brushed her flank, a sensation that spoke of kindness rather than threat. That momentary spark chased away the fog of fear, revealing a slender path toward safety. Martinez felt an almost spiritual connection in that flash of mutual understanding. The heaviness of winter seemed to lift as empathy thawed the space between human and canine hearts. He knew the challenges were far from over, the storm raged on, and the pups still lay fragile at their mother's side, but for a precious instant, hope transcended the brutality of night. Two souls, human and animal, bound by silent empathy and shared vulnerability, confront the darkest depths of fear, and in that meeting, discover the first fragile spark of trust. Officer Martinez felt a surge of cautious optimism as the thermal blanket and heat packs began to work their magic. The mother German shepherd lifted her head and blinked slowly, nostrils flaring as she registered the warmth radiating from the makeshift shelter he had fashioned. Her pups stirred, paws kneading the soft folds of the blanket as if rediscovering hope. Martinez poured a small measure of warmed formula into a bowl and held it out. One pup braced on unsteady legs, nosed the bowl, and lapped deliberately, its tail thumping faintly against the snow. The mother watched closely, every muscle tense yet visibly more relaxed than moments before. In this fleeting respite, Martinez allowed himself a moment to breathe. The wind's fury had lessened to an angry whisper, the sky lightening with the promise of dawn. He wrapped a spare jacket around his own shoulders, then draped another around the mother's frame, tucking her gently into the blanket cocoon. As he worked, he spoke softly, his voice unwavering. "Rest now. You've made it through the worst." The pups huddled closer to their mother, their small bodies warming against her chest. The air between them shimmered with relief, the immediate threat of freezing replaced by a fragile sense of safety. Though the storm still raged beyond the mill's crumbling walls, the family's condition had stabilized enough for Martinez to radio dispatch with confidence. He requested an urgent ETA for animal control and the veterinary EMS unit, emphasizing that while the immediate crisis had eased, comprehensive care was still critical. Each word carried the weight of his commitment to these animals' survival. As he waited, Martinez's mind drifted to the broader implications of tonight's rescue, fostering community awareness, securing emergency resources for strays, and the vital role of compassion in bridging the gap between human duty and animal welfare. But for now, he focused on the pair of amber eyes, meeting his own eyes that spoke of gratitude and newfound trust. In that shared gaze, he sensed the first true victory of the night, the bond forged through kindness. Before we continue, where are you watching from today? Comment below. A momentary calm replaces life-threatening peril as warmth and nourishment restore hope. Yet true safety lies just beyond the horizon. A fierce gale battered the mill's broken windows as the storm redoubled its efforts, snow swirling like a phantom tide across the courtyard. Officer Martinez felt the blanket's warmth ebb as freezing spray soaked through its fabric, chilling the mother dog's flank once more. Her shivers returned in tremulous waves, each convulsion more violent than the last. The pups, now roused by their mother's agitation, whimpered and crawled toward her, their weakened limbs faltering on the icy ground. Martinez's breath caught as he realized how quickly the temporary haven he'd created was dissolving into a death trap. He moved to shield them anew, stacking pieces of debris from the mill-rotten boards and a dented metal sheet against the blanket to serve as a windbreak. His gloves, already stiff with moisture, hampered his efforts. Each nail he pried from the wood bit into his palm, tears prickling his eyes from the sting. The radio crackled overhead with static. Animal control was stalled 2 miles back by a drifting snowbank, and the veterinary EMS unit's ETA had slipped by another 20 minutes. Time, Martinez understood, was the fiercest adversary of all. As adrenaline surged, Martinez leaned over the mother's side, pressing his body against hers to share every ounce of residual heat. He murmured apologies for their suffering, his own internal monologue racing. Why had help come so slowly? Could he have chosen a better spot? Each question pounded against his ribs like the storm itself. He recalled a failed rescue early in his career, the sorrow of returning to the precinct empty-handed, and vowed he would not let that outcome repeat tonight. Above them, a thunderous crack announced a collapsing beam within the mill, showering snow and splinters across the precarious shelter. The mother snapped upright, protective instincts flaring as she positioned herself between her pups and the threat. Martinez gripped her collar, his voice urgent. Stay with me. We'll get through this. Despite his calm tone, his knuckles turned white as he braced against the next onslaught. In that moment, the true battle began. Against weather, against dwindling time, and against despair itself. A savage blizzard tears at their fragile refuge. Back up miles away, and every heartbeat edges closer to catastrophe. At one officer's determination may still forge a path to salvation. Dawn's first light struggled through the storm clouds, casting a gray pall over the mill's snow-choked courtyard. Officer Martinez tightened his grip on the mother's collar as distant sirens signaled the arrival of backup. His heart pounded, relief and renewed urgency warred in his chest. The mother, sensing the shift in atmosphere, rose to her paws with unsteady resolve, shielding her pups as he'd taught them both. Moments later, the headlights of an animal control van cut through the swirling snow. The vehicle skidded to a stop, wheels spinning in fresh drifts. Two technicians leaped from the cab, hauling crates and warming equipment. Martinez directed them in clipped commands, his voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through his veins. Secure the pups first, gentle, but fast. Heat packs for the mother. Then clear a path to the EMS rig. Each instruction carried the weight of countless lives hanging in the balance. The mother's amber eyes followed the flurry of motion, ear tips pressed back in caution. One technician knelt beside her, extending a gloved hand with a soft tone. "It's okay, girl, we're here to help." The mother hesitated, muscles coiled for flight or defense. Martinez exchanged a glance with the technicians, his nod conveying the trust forged through the night's trials. Slowly, the mother allowed herself to be guided into a secured blanket sling, her pups tucked gently into separate crates. As the EMS vehicle's engine roared to life, Martinez placed a final hand on the mother's head. His voice was a whisper, only she could hear. "Stay strong." In that charged moment, rescue at hand, but uncertainty still looming, the bond that had carried them through freezing darkness reached its critical test. Rescue teams converge as hope ignites its final flame. Salvation lies just beyond the storm's edge. But the true test of trust still awaits, as the EMS rig rumbled away through thinning flurries. Officer Martinez watched until the silhouette of the mother German Shepherd and her pups vanished into the warmth of the heated compartment. The mill's echoes fell silent, replaced by the steady hum of recovery now underway. Relief washed over him as he recalled the mother's wary posture at first light, transformed into a tentative trust that allowed her rescue. In his mind, he replayed the moment, her gaze softened under the technician's gentle touch, proof that kindness can overcome the deepest fear. Behind him, the first birds braved the cold, their song fragile, yet insistent to a promise of renewal. Martinez exhaled, recognizing that tonight's triumph extended beyond saving for lives. It rekindled faith and compassion's power to heal both animal and human spirit. He placed his gloved hand on the mill's weathered beam, a silent vow that he would advocate for every creature threatened by winter's cruelty. A harrowing rescue culminates in safe passage to healing. After the storm's fury, compassion paves a path toward lasting hope. In the quiet aftermath of rescue, Officer Martinez stood beneath a pale winter sun, reflecting on the fragile alliance forged in the storm. He thought of the mother's wary eyes transforming into trust, and the pup's timid strides toward warmth. This encounter, more than a duty, reaffirmed his belief that compassion transcends barriers. He envisaged them, healed and thriving, each wag of a tail, a tribute to perseverance. Back at the station, he vowed to champion better winter protocols and spay-neuter outreach, ensuring no family suffered as theirs did. In saving these lives, he discovered hope's enduring, redemptive, transformative power. How do you hope the bond between them unfolds? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the glow of recovery, a once frozen family embraces new beginnings. As one officer's steadfast care blossoms into a lasting testament of trust and renewal. Months later, the German Shepherd family and happily thrives in a loving foster home. The pups grow strong, and their mother's coat gleams. Officer Martinez visits, sharing foster's photos. Their journey inspires the community's adoption drive. Viewers are encouraged to consider opening their homes and share their own rescue stories. From near-fatal abandonment to a nurturing haven, their journey proves that compassion can rewrite destiny.